Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're learning Masechtas Menachos, Daf Samach Zayin. We're going to begin at the very top of Samach Zayin about Aleph. Gilgul Hektish, Potter. So, Gilgul Hektish, Rashi says, Le'inin Chala, you would not be chayav to take off challah if the flour is mixed in a dough while it's in the possession of Hektish. So, at the time that you're doing this mixture, at that point, if it was in the possession of Hektish, the din is that you are potter from Chal. Dinan. As we find in a Mishnah, Hekdisha Isasa, let's say you sanctified the dough, Ad Shel Gilgula, before you kneaded it up, Upadasa, and then you redeemed it, so then Chayavis. In that situation, you will be Chayav in Chala. However, Mishigilgula, in fact, if, let's say, from the time that you mixed it together, upadasa, and you redeemed it, chayavis, you're also chayav. However, this is the case. Hekdisha, let's say you're makdish it, ad shul gilgula, the gilgula hagizbar. In other words, it was hektish before you mixed it together. The flour was already designated as hektish, and then the gizbor does the mixing. At the time of the mixing is the question of when you're going to be, if you're chayav and challah. So v'achakach pedasa, even afterwards redeemed, and that doesn't belong to hektish, but patura. Why shebeshas chayvasa haisa patura? Because at the time of the chiyuv, notice at that moment when it was being mixed, we then look at that moment and ask, does it belong to Hektish? So if it's in possession of Hektish, like in this case the Gizbor, then you're going to be Potter from Chala. However, again, if let's say you were Makdish it before you mixed it, and then you redeemed it, and then you mixed it, so you're Chayiv and Chala, because in that case, it's yours, right? Because you were paid it. For that matter, also if you're Makdish it before you mixed it, okay, that's it. So that's it. So boy Rabbi, Gilgul Kachavimai. So the question is, what happens not biyad hektish, but biyad and oivik kachavim? Do we say that you're pater or chayiv and chal in that regard? So Mr. Tanan, on one hand, we did learn like this: Gershon is Gayer. So you have someone who was not Jewish and he converted. V'hoisla isa, there's dough, so it depends. Nasa, if the dough was made ad shul nisgar potter. Obviously, if he made the dough before he was Jewish, then he's potter from challah, because there's no chiyuv for an akum to take off challah. However, mishnah gayer, let's say he was already converted, which is a full-fledged Jew, and then he mixes the dough. Obviously, he's chayiv. It's pretty obvious that should be the case. Okay. Safi chayiv, but the chiddush is, if we're not sure when this dough was mixed, was it before or after he converted? So the question is, what's the status? So then we still say l'chumra, we're going to go strict and say that you're chayiv l'chal. So Haman Kataniwa. So who's the author of this statement? Tivir Kolhi. Maybe it's everyone. V'afil Rabbi Huda to k'machayve, that normally they say you're chayiv in chala hasam patri. Over here, over there they'll pater hacha the machayve hasam patri hacha, because hasam hu diksiv digancha yatera. It says it needs to be your grain, and it says it multiple times. So having miyad achamiyat then miyad achamiyat elo rabbis. It's coming to include a feel of kachavim, that even a kachavim is going to be chayiv and meiser. Okay, so that's what they hold. Avol trees dim seichem ksiv. When it comes to challah, it's different. It says your doughs. Cha seichem is kidei asischem. Has to be a certain amount. The cha seichem v'lo isas v'chachavim, exclusive v'chachavim, and v'lo isas hektish. So therefore, even if you hold that when it comes to meiser, biyad of kachavim, that would be chayiv, that's because of gzeres akasav of in miyat el rabbis. However, when it comes to challah, maybe not. Maybe challah they're potter. Uldilma Rav Yosef Rav Shimon Katani Wada Kapatri of a Rabbi Yehuda Gam Rashis Mahasam. Says, so let's look at Rashi. So Rashi says, Hasam Hanutaima. So if I feel Rabbi Huda Machabi Hasam Gabi Miruach, when it comes to making this pile, Mi Patri Hachel, they also potter over here. So he said the reason why when it comes to Chachamim who makes these piles that you're not potter is because it says Digoncha 2 times. Okay? And Rashi elaborates that a little bit more. Fine. And Mirachamidol Rabos, Digun of Chachavim Dechayev. And therefore they will be chayiv in Trumas and Maisers. Reishis, however, Malahol and Mirachav Chachavim Loi Potter of Gilgul of Chachavim Menu Poiter. Okay, so that is the question. So Amarava, Yehi Rava should be your will, Diachse Bechilma, that it should basically appear to you in a dream. You should be zeicha to find out this answers. Hadam Rava Mandir Mirachav Chachavim Potter. So he says that anyone who says that when it comes to, as we saw in yesterday's daf, when Chachamim makes this pile, right? So according to him, if at the time that it is in this status that he holds that an Chachavim is potter, he'll potter here too. So too when it comes to challah. So Eisra Papul Rabbi Oim Chachavim Shehifresh Peter Chamor. So you have no Chachavim. There's Mafresh a Peter Chamor. But challah. So Moedino Isa Shehu Potter. So basically, we say in these cases he is going to be potter. Says Rashi Shehifresh Se. He was Mafresh a sheep. Lopidin Peter Chamor. Shenoyel will be Yosef Chachavim. While who's not Chachavim, or the challah which was mixed up was not Chachavim. So he said that he's potter over there when it comes to these things. The chalasu nechelos lizarim. The challah can be eaten by non-kohen. Upeter chamor geizes v'oid boy. You can shear it and do work with it. Ha truma so asura, which is mashma. It doesn't mention anything about the truma. Maybe the truma is still asur. The fact that it's in a pile does not potter. So we see that it's not just the man yomer who says potter there is potter here. We say it's not the case. When it comes to the challah of an Ovid Chachavim in Eretz Yisrael, the trumasu b'chutzaretz as well as the truma in the chutzaretz, moedino is a shoe potter. So we hold that he's potter. Chalasu nechel sezarim, the chal can be eaten by non-kohen. Utrumasu enu midamas, and the truma is not like considered like a forbidden mixture, which is mashma hatrumasu ba'aretz asura umidamas, that the truma in Eretz Yisrael would be asur. So so that's the question. The answer is that's true, but the midrabanan gzer mishum bali kisim. In other words, so that wealthy people would not avoid separating Shumas and Maisrus by temporarily transmitting the ownership to the Akum. But the truth is, Midyaraisa, there would be no Chi of Trumas and Maisrus either. Look at Rashi. Ashirim Shaleichin Tvua Mechamorim. They get grain from their donkey drivers. If we allow no meiser to be taken, Harbi has a lot of land. V'chasin al roiv meiserus may not take off meiser. V'yiknul Ovid Chachavim, he'll let the Ovid Chachavim get their land. So basically, so this way it'll be mafgel a meiser, which not everyone holds that's true, but that's another opinion. Okay, let's look at question 5. What is the Gzeres Bali Kisin? So, long answer here. So Gazru Shemei Ruach Akum Enu Patim Trumas Amaisers. that we say that he's not going to be potter, even though maybe Mikra Din he should be. Either because the wealthy people would take grain from their donkey drivers, who are non-Jews, they're akum, and v'ishar sulhu below meiser. If they don't take a meiser, sulmeimer daflo kech mechamar yisrael potter. We may say that also someone who buys from a donkey driver who's Yisrael will be potter. And of course, that's not true. Of course, he'd be chayav in trumas, or that basically he would have the fields sold to the akum so that the meiser would not, at least temporarily, transferring, so that he'd be potter from meiser. Okay, TB 19. Chazal gozru al mirach akum shechaya betruma mishum bali kisin mahabir beis pirushim barashi. So let's see what I wrote. Mishum chamarim, the donkey drivers, vashirim lakach esa dagan, they would take the grain from them. O noisnim sadois la'akum, he would give temporarily fields to the akum. Upatir b'maisrus v'zeh b'far hesia. Okay, I'm throwing that in there. Avachal shu yachol aflis pachlis mashir b'tzina l'gozer. Okay, I kind of like threw that in there, which I'm not sure you needed to answer that, but that's the basic idea. TA 16. We're going to see that in a second. We'll do that one next. So that's what Bali Kisin are. So let's continue to Amud Beis. So Ihachi Afil Chalanami. Why aren't we also making Zera? Says Rashi, Ligzor Gilgul Nami Mishum Bali Kisin. Maybe we should also have this, just like by Trumas and Meisers, we're going to say he's Chaim and a Rabbanon, whatever. So maybe we should say the same thing by Chala. So why is he potter? Because Efsher the Afilu Pachlas Mechameshis Rum Kemach V'oid. So the truth is, you never have to take off Chala anyway. You don't need this trick of giving it to an Akam, because you could just not make so much Chala. If you always make a small amount of Chala, then you don't have to take off the Chala, right? If you don't do so much. So Trumanami Yesher the Avidullah Karabi Oishia. Come on, Brachos. Elsewhere, what was that? Dear Rabbi Yishim, Arm Adam al Tivuaso, a person can make a trick, Umachnisa b'mites shalah, and bring it in while it's still in its chaff. So it's only fit for animal consumption. Upaturim in a meiser. Inami, another way to get out of meiser. The ayla derech gagos, derech karfifos. Not everyone holds like this, but you can take it through the roof, not through the general way, as the pasuk says, through the gate. Anyway, so if there's loopholes that you can get away with challah, it's not making so much, there's ways of getting out of meiser too. So then, what's the purpose of the gezer? The answer is hasam before hasia zilbe milsa hacha b'sinelu zilbe milsa. So there's a huge distinction when it comes to truma. So this is something done with in your fields. It's perfect if for hasia. Right? Everyone knows about this. So therefore, because of that, a person's not going to do these tricks, even though they technically would work. Because it makes you look basically like a lowlife, that you're just trying to cut corners against halacha. But the reality of maybe selling it temporarily to an akum is a legitimate concern. However, when it comes to challah, since the whole thing is done b'sina anyway, a person is not going to end up giving it to an akum anyway, because they can just always, if they're trying to get away with being chayav and challah, they can just take a little bit, do a little bit less. Okay. Question TA 16. Madua b'truma gazru al mirach akum mishum bali kisin v'chalu gazru. So b'truma in biyadol paitra, right? B'chala biyadol, even though it is, but it's for hesia. So since you can get away with never being chayav and challah, and no one's going to think you're a cheapskate because you're doing it in the privacy of your own home, so then you'll do it. Therefore, you're not going to end up needing to come on to giving it over to an akum. Mashenki, when it comes to truma, which is before hesia, all these other things you're not going to do, and it's embarrassing. So you may end up giving it in the hands of an akum. So that's why we're geyser that you're going to be chayiv for truma because of the gzer of bali kisin, but not when it comes to challah. Okay. Okay, let's now see the next Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, "Bol isarain." Let's say a person has this flour, which again he produced and made it proper. So nasal of shamna, you put oils, nasa, the frankincense, and then you do all these different stages of avoda. When it just like we do typically with a lot of these menachos, yitzay kubolil. So you put it in and you mix it. Of a heinif, a higish, so you wave it, then you bring it close to the mizbeach. Then you do a kamatz, you do a kamitza of this flour offering out of barley for Pesach. The hikter, and you're makter it on the mizbeach. V'shar nechel kohanim, just like any shiraim, the kohanim eat the rest. Mishikar v'oimer, from the time that the oimer was brought, which is a makter, now you can now eat all the new grains, yotzin umoitzin shuk Yerushalayim, so they would go out, and you would be able to find in the shuk shu moli kamach kli. However, shulbras chachamim divrei Rameir. Rameir says the chachamim are not very happy that somehow all this food was already out in the open, including all the toasted grains, which means they prepared it and had it all ready to go, so that the second after the Omer was brought on the second day of Pesach, so all of a sudden we have all this food readily available. The question is, how could that possibly be? Because by doing that, there's a chance that you may eat it before the Omer was brought. So that's the reason why Rameir's geyser, he's concerned that shul bratz and chachamim, because they're concerned that you may end up eating it. Behuda Omer bratz and chachamim hoyois, and that's bratz and chachamim. After all, there's no reason to be geyser. They're not going to eat it. We're ask a question. V'loi gazar Rabbi Yehuda demoyasil meichel. Is it true that Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned that you may come to eat the grains before? Or minhu Rabbi Yehuda oimer boitkin or arboas are that when it comes to Pesach, so you have to do bedika of chametz on the night of the 14th on Erev Pesach, with arboas or shachris, and then in the morning. And also the time that you do the burning. So what is this coming to tell you? It says Rashi, to do it after that, lo yivdaik. We don't want you to look. If you loy badak bizmanai, even if you didn't check it in those other times, because you're in Misham and Dilma Asil Meichel. Because now, after Chatzos, on Erev Pesach, you're not allowed to eat chametz. But if we're allowing you to start looking for chametz, you find a guska yafa, so you may end up eating it. So kishamayitza b'Pesach, Erev Pesach, Rabbanan. So what do we see clearly? According to Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, he's afraid you may eat it. B'yan our Mishnah, by the Chadash, he's not afraid. He says, it's Barat and Chachamim, so that's going to be the Kasha. Chachamim are lo badak. Chachamim say, lo badak. What does that mean? Rabbanan Pligal had the Yamri, lo badak b'taycha moyed, kalaymer b'moyed sri fasai. You didn't burn it, so the Hainu b'sheish, yivdik l'achar moyed, you could b'taycha hamoyed ha'pesach atzmi, you can search for it now. Even afterwards, you're not going to eat the chametz on the shas iser of achilos chametz. Anyway, it's a steer on Rabbi Yehuda. So Maral b'shani chadash. So chadash. So really, normally we're afraid you're going to eat. However, by chadash you're not going to, because there's a hecker. There's some difference. Some chesamadav mitan shelo hitarteloi el aledi kituf, because the only way we allowed them to harvest this chadash before the bringing of the omer is it had to be done plucked by hand. So there's Zacharhu, so he's going to remember that his chadash is not going to come to eat it. So we allow him. We allow you to harvest. You can't eat it, but maybe you're going to come to eat it. No, because we require to do it in an unusual way. You're like, why are we being required here to do it in an unusual way? It's because it's chadash. You can't eat it yet. Tina Katsira. Okay, I can understand the distinction in the harvesting. Techina or Kada, Michael Maimer. There's other Malachos. What shinui is done by them? So halukasha. Tchina grinding is berecha diyade. That you're using like a hand grinder, which is not the typical one, not the one which is used with water. And harkada, when you do rikud, the sifting is al gabi nafah. It's using this type of sieve, which is, again, not the normal way. Okay, so the Gemara says, Beis HaShlochen, when it comes to an irrigated field, the Sharia Katsira, we do allow a person to be able to harvest it. Not Kaitzrin Beis HaShlochen Sheba Mokim, that we allow you to harvest these irrigated valleys that are found again in the valleys. And Rashi says, "Tikivanda sadi aveshahi." Why do we allow you to irrigate it? Because it's usually gets so dried up, it'll be azul ibud. So therefore, we're lenient and we allow you to do this. Of a low goichin, but you're not allowed to be goichin. Says Rashi, lo yasenu gadish adli achar omer. You're not allowed to like make piles and to bring into like silos until the omer. So we do allow you to at least irrigate to harvest irrigated fields, because otherwise they're going to dry up. But we don't let you go too far. So my equal memor. So what are you going to say according to this? Like, what's the shinoi? El omer bai chadash bodomine chametz lo bodomine. The reason why by Pesach he's concerned that you may eat it is because on chametz all year round you're eating chametz, and all of a sudden now today on Erev Pesach you stop, but in your mind you've always been eating chametz. Over here you will be badal, because when it comes to chadash you haven't been allowed to eat it all this time, and only after the bringing of the omer offering, then you'll be able to eat it. So therefore you're not going to eat it. So it's like the opposite direction. By chametz you've always been eating it, so you're a little badal. By chadash you're never have been allowed to eat it, so you're badal until shas heter. So that's the basic answer there. Omer Rava, and this is a Gemara in Pesachim and a couple other places. Omer Rav Rabbi Huda Kasha Rabbanu Rabbanu Kasha El Omer Rabbi Rabbi Huda Rabbanu Kasha Kneshanina. We already answered Rabbi Huda. One is badal, one's not badal. The Rabbanu Kasha L'chayr the Rabbanan, we'll call the Rabbanan Stam Mastis Rameir. So Rameir in our Mishnah said that it was Shelo Baratzon Chachamim, which means they're afraid by Chadash you'll eat the Chadash, but by Chametz they're not afraid, right? So it's the opposite. So why? So he says like this: Hu atzmo machzer level sarfo michel achel minei. Normally by chadash, you're right, I'm concerned you may eat it. So why isn't he concerned you may end up eating the chametz? Because why are you looking for the chametz? The whole purpose of you looking for the chametz is to burn it, is to destroy it. So then, since your entire action has the motivation and purpose to destroy the chametz, you are not going to eat it because you know that's not what you're doing it for. Pretty logical answer. Rav Ashi Rabbi Yehuda Kasha, a different reason. It's not because of badal, but rather, what is the difference between chametz and chadash? So when it comes to chadash, in which he says it's baratzon chachamim, also a person's going to be is badal, but here it says because of kemach koli tanan, roasted flour. Now what's roasted flour? That's something which is inedible. You can't eat it, right? So chametz, you can eat it. That's chametz. It's right there. But when it comes to what do they have? Kemach koli. Okay, they prepared it, but it's not royal achila. So therefore, it's not an issue of maybe someone's going to eat it. Okay, tanan v'ha Rav Ashi Badusi. The truth is, the answer that Rav Ashi gives is a shtickle difficult to understand. Tenach Mekli v'elech, Mekoli v'elech. I can understand from the time it was toasted and on. Ad Koli Ma'ikamemer. Before that, what are you going to say? For example, at the time of the harvesting, it was fit to eat at that point. V'chitema hachanami alidei kitov. So maybe we could say it's because it was plucked by hand, so that was a shinoi. Ukedaraba beis hashlachim d'shari katsira ma'alkameimor. Can you go back to the question? Why are we making a leniency by an irrigated field, and which is in the valleys, there's no shinui at all. So therefore, we're not going to say the whole logic, which sounds like a great answer, that a person is busy searching to destroy. You're not going to search to eat it. Okay, but anyway, we say it's a bedusa, so we basically stick to badal. Okay, we're stop there. We'll take question 6. However, Yehuda says baratzon chachamim. So I'm doing Indian bedikas chametz bepesach hechlifu shitasam. So according to the Rabbanon, by chametz on Pesach, he's not afraid you're going to eat it because, again, according to this logic, you're going to look for the chametz. So of course you're not going to eat it. Rabbi Yehuda says that chametz is more of a chashash because you're not badal from it. Masha inkin chadash, which you already badal, and therefore it is less of an issue. This may be the same question as TA 17. I got this wrong. I don't know how. Yoitzin umoitzin shukur shleim. Baratzayin chachamim. So madua inkan iser katsira koydem oimer. Oh, that's like not the question I was thinking. So the question is, why is there no iser of katsira before? So as what we said before, because mitoich shel hitirarta lo el aide kitov zacharhu. So that's what they're looking for. Now I know why I got it wrong, because that's maybe I wasn't understanding that. But they marked it aide kitov, namely plucking it biyad by hand, and that was the reason for that. That's TA 17. That's an unfortunate, not a difficult question, but that's probably didn't understand what the question was. Okay, we're going to stop there. Adkan.